This is episode number 3. I'm with Kyle Hegarty, a 16-plus year remote worker veteran who's been traveling with his family as a digital nomad since February 2023 now. And today he joins us from Boston in the USA. This is on a stop from his travel. Kyle runs Leadership Nomad, PTE Limited, registered in Singapore. He helps companies and executives grow teams and businesses globally, focusing on building sales pipelines around the world. Kyle also wrote a book called The Accidental Business Nomad, a survival guide for working across a shrinking planet. He loves that being a digital nomad keeps you on his toes and it rewards curiosity. But the lack of routine can get challenging if not managed correctly. He says it's also difficult to build solid face-to-face networks. Hey, Kyle, thank you very much for joining me today.
How are you? Good to see you again.
So you're in the US today on a stop, as I said, since February. You said, I think you were telling me before we started recording that you've been visiting like 7 countries since February.
We've been living in Singapore, but starting in February this year, we've been in Vietnam, Australia, Japan, Indonesia, Spain, and now the US.
Right.
So a lot of hopping around this year, trying to do full-blown remote work.
Yes, and you've been doing that with your family, your wife and kids, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Sure.
And like you were saying, I was talking about what you like and what you dislike about the digital nomad life. It comes with ups and downs, but you were also telling me earlier on when we first talked that it's critical that you get ready for it, like especially if you want to combine work and travel. And when we prepared this episode, I asked you to give one main recommendation to aspiring digital nomads. And you said, focus on your career rather than being a nomad. At the end of the day, this only works if you can create a sustainable business and or career. Can you elaborate?
Sure. And maybe we need to define nomad in the terminology for today, because I know digital nomad is the big phrase now. I think I came up with leadership nomad back in 2015, and to me the idea was, I was thinking about it more from a mental standpoint, meaning I found, and many others found, that we're working across cultures all the time, and that was oftentimes happening remotely. Even now, nearly 10 years ago, you'd be on calls with people from 5 different continents in any given day. So to me, the idea was more of a mental ability to be able to hop around and to adapt to different environments, even digitally. I think that today's digital nomads, and maybe jump in, but like, it's now about, well, let's get out there and let's just work remotely and kind of explore the world as we go. So there's different definitions to it. But what I was getting at when we chatted, and it's probably my biggest frustration with the current digital nomad terminology and at least social media presence, is that it seems very much focused on the lifestyle rather than getting stuff done. I've always been focused on, the Business Nomad was the book, because it was like, okay, it doesn't matter where you are we getting stuff done? So I'm a very big proponent of putting that emphasis towards the career, towards the business piece of that. And I lightly joked to you last time, it's like, every time I see these digital nomad articles, it's a picture of these people half naked sitting by a pool. Maybe there's a laptop. You're doing work from a beach. Like, who the hell would want to work from a beach on a laptop? That seems. Have you ever tried that? It's stupid.
I mean, that's interesting you say that, because I have a pair of clients. They were in Thailand like a year ago. They are digital nomads.
Yep.
We were actually doing a coaching session from the beach.
Yep.
But after 2 months of that, they said we had to find an office because we could not concentrate at all. it was too difficult to be on the
Yeah.
beach and work. It's not possible.
It's, I guess it's for the photo op, right? Or you know,
Yeah.
maybe the photo op has sold, is trying to sell a lifestyle that I guess that's my frustration, which is like, let's just get away from the Instagram photo ops and actually talk about productivity.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, for many digital nomads, they need to get hired, right? Whether it's clients or they're going to be full-time employees somewhere, and both clients and employees don't care about your bikini photos by the pool, or you know, I know you asked me to send you my bikini shots, Lauren. I'm not sending them to you just because
Damn. So what sort of careers can digital nomads embrace?
I think the cool thing about today is that that answer is probably limitless, and you know, I could rattle off a laundry list, and interestingly enough, you know, it's probably the stuff in between that I'm totally missing, because there's huge opportunities everywhere. I think thinking about from a global standpoint, or even that tricky word of globalization, really, it's kind of about finding different arbitrages, and what that means would be, you know, back in the day, you'd travel to a different part of the world and you'd say, oh, they're making these rugs. Well, okay, I could actually import these rugs somewhere else and charge the difference because the people have a different price value to it. That's sort of the traditional way of thinking about it. Now there's services arbitrage. So you can say, well, actually, do I need to hire somebody here in Boston or in Helsinki, or can that work be done in Manila? And if so, how does that work? So the opportunities would be to continue to think about hiring and building teams globally to be able to take advantage of some of those pricing opportunities. That's sort of the traditional way of thinking about going global and building businesses globally, I think. But then there's the individual approach, which would be, hey, I'm a content creator. I can do this from anywhere. And so let me, you know, build websites, write copy, etc. I can do that from anywhere. So I think that, you know, that world continues to evolve. It really depends on who your audience is and what they're looking to do. My background is really more in the probably traditional corporates and software side. So I think about it from that standpoint rather than the individual. You know, I couldn't advise anybody on their YouTube careers or anything like that.
Yeah, but if you were to advise someone who wants to, well, stay in the corporate world but wants to live the digital nomad life, what would you say? You know, what to start, because it's not easy.
It's not easy. There are a lot of things that there are a lot of things that are in good place for us right now. So with the technology, the ability to do this from anywhere, that's all incredible. The you know, world is in many ways easier than ever to do this, but the obstacles are sincere, are very large, which would be the traditional pushback. Many companies they're actually pulling away from it. There are very tricky tax implications that they face, not only the individual faces, but the companies face. And in some cases, that's not even true, but they believe it to be true. And so that becomes the norm anyway. They are desperately trying to balance how to, you know, what's fair and what's not. Why could one employee be able to just gallivant around the world while the others are supposedly, you know, tethered to one place? And so I think that, you know, we are, as you know, we're in this really interesting kind of place where companies are trying to figure that out. So if you are thinking about turning into kind of a digital nomad lifestyle from a corporate, I think a long-term plan is important, which is, you know, test the waters. So find out what you can and cannot get away with. One option would be to actually probably get a transfer for a year or two to another office. So a friend of mine just got a transfer to their office in Madrid. Nobody goes to the office in Madrid. So now he's based in northern Spain and he's kind of popping around Europe. So he's kind of snuck in a digital nomad lifestyle.
That's smart.
Under the veil of like just a transfer. So there's little ways I think that probably are people are finding ways through this new maze of difficulties and regulations.
Yeah, and then I guess also, like you said, it depends on the country because there are tax implications. There's a mentality also. Now we've seen like companies like I think Google, was it Google? They were like, okay, it's okay, all staff can stay, can work remotely, but now they start of changing their minds. They want
As,
people to come back to the
it,
office.
it seems the pendulum swinging back right now.
Yeah.
That and just to put ourselves in the shoes of the companies or the executives, they are there is concern about team cohesion at one point, right? Like how do you build a team? How do you build a company culture? How do you do that remotely? We've in my various roles, we've done it. It's doable, but it's probably not doable for every company. And it certainly comes down to the leadership styles and how those things get managed. And a fully remote team, it's not the end all be all. It's not perfect. I think that we all have to tread lightly here before we plant our flags and declare the future is all remote, because that there's definitely challenges with this. So I think that people have to be flexible and open-minded in to both sides of this debate.
Yeah.
But the pendulum is definitely swinging back to bringing people back to office more frequently.
Yeah, and maybe this is why I see, at least on my side, I've seen more digital nomads who are solopreneurs or
Yeah.
freelancers
Yeah.
rather than working for someone, an employee working for someone else.
And if and that's great. I highly recommend that, as long as you have the feeling that there's enough kind of safety there to it, right? It's
Yeah.
you got to have your pipeline. So if anybody who's doing that, whether you like it or not, you're a salesperson, because you're selling yourself. And so that it does require some sales skills, some networking skills. One thing that I found this year, especially, to be challenging, even I'm a salesperson, it's to be able to maintain and build new networks when you aren't anywhere.
Yeah.
It has to be done virtually and digitally, and that's fine. You can do that, but it doesn't have the same resonance as at a dinner party 2 nights ago. Met somebody, and really good opportunities right there, which that happens during a face-to-face interaction, not so much from a cold LinkedIn outreach, right? So there's got to be kind of additional efforts to be put in if you go down the path of working remotely as a contractor, to be able to have that type of pipeline that keeps everything going.
Yeah, because face-to-face conversations are more spontaneous,
Yeah.
and you get to know each other more easily. You can spend a bit more time. It's not all about work, work, work.
No, and in fact, one of the bits of advice is to actually spend more, even if it's digitally, just to spend more time having conversations like these.
Yeah.
And not every meeting has to have an agenda. And so it's almost like you have to kind of spend more time just digitally building relationships. And I think that takes more effort, because you can't do that spontaneously, using your word, which is right. You have to have that. I don't want to say force it, but you have to nudge those additional conversations, and it's up to you to do that, because the rest of the world isn't sitting back waiting for you to, nobody cares.
Yeah.
like nobody. And it goes back to this thing. It's like people don't want to hear about. I think that it's exciting, the digital nomad lifestyle, but I don't think most people want to hear about it. And so you just have to be careful with that, because if that actually could become a handicap to getting hired. If here's the person who's like I was I think when we last spoke, I was in Tasmania, and I had this fantastic view in my background of this like beautiful harbor and all this stuff. It's like I ended up putting a fake background, because people didn't want to. Some people, you get a little bit of jealousy, or they're kind of asking, where are you? And it distracts from the purpose of actually getting stuff done. So you have to read the room every time.
Yeah, it's a good point. It must also some people might also believe that you're not, they're not confident in you because
Right.
you live on the beach over
The, you
there.
know, the nomad, the word nomad, I debated using it in the company name because
Yeah.
there's a negative connotation to it. And I don't mean that like you can get culturally in trouble for that one, but like there's a sense of wandering, and wandering
Mm,
and business don't necessarily play nicely in the same sentence together. Maybe that's
mm,
actually the ultimate problem with what we're up against.
that's a great point. This ties back into your own career because I introduced you as a remote worker for
Mm,
16 years.
yeah.
Uh, then you told me that then you told us that you became a digital nomad since February. What's the difference between the two, like remote worker
Yeah,
and
it's a
digital
very
nomad?
good question. So I've lived in Singapore for 16 plus years and built a marketing agency uh, based off of the U.S. Team. There was a U.S. team that was actually hybrid since 2005.
Right.
So I'd already come from that kind of hybrid build out anyway, and I continued that across Southeast Asia. So there was a point where we had about 50, 55 people across 7 different countries. And this was before Zoom existed. So we were, poking around on some of these old uh, sites trying to figure all of this stuff out. Uh, I think that's very much of a nomadic business where you've got 7 virtual offices, many people I had hired and I had never met throughout the entire life
Mm,
cycle of the business. Clients were certainly in other countries as well. So the entire operation was globally virtual. Now, I guess so that was, and I was generally based in Singapore, but found myself on a plane every other week. So is that a nomadic lifestyle? I don't know. To some people, yes. To others, it's not that nomadic. I don't know. But this
yeah,
year has been different. This year is living out of a backpack for the most part.
right, right. With no, maybe the difference is when you're a remote worker, you're based somewhere and you just fly and come back.
Yeah.
And as a digital nomad, you don't have a base. You're always on the move.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to talk to other. We've met a number of people as throughout our travels, especially this year. You kind of need a base.
Mm,
You kind of need a base. The world doesn't really put up with it. Maybe there's more services popping up now, but as you know, like it's hard to get insurance if you
yeah,
don't live anywhere. It's
yeah,
hard to get finance a bank. Like
yeah,
what bank's going to put up with this?
yeah.
You kind of need an address still, even if you don't have one. So it's kind of an interesting game you've got to play.
Yes, yes. I've heard that several times from long term digital nomads. They all have a base
Yeah.
because of the logistics.
And I
And the
wonder also
paperwork.
the logistics. So there's the logistics. I wonder if there's a mental component too. Uh, I was telling you, it's ironic that I'm having this call today from the U.S. It's the first time
Yeah.
I've been in the States in a while, and this happens to be the house that I grew up in. So I've come full circle. This is the most unnomadic place to have this conversation ever. But it's nice to be back.
Yeah, yeah. I understand. So going back, maybe this is your new home based.
Yeah, look, I think that one of the things that I've always liked about traveling, and it sounds counterintuitive, but traveling kind of makes you think a lot more about where you came from,
Mm,
right? You're out doing all this stuff, but ultimately we all come from somewhere, so it actually makes you appreciate it more so. A lot of traveling is sitting around going, "Why the hell am I doing this? Why should?" That's part of the adventure as well.
mm. So talking about the adventure as an entrepreneur and a digital nomad, you know, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of digital nomads are entrepreneurs or solopreneurs,
Yeah.
consulting freelancers. How can you succeed both as at being an entrepreneur and being a digital nomad? How can you grow a business like that?
It depends on if you want to grow a business or not. And it's okay if the answer is that you don't want to grow a business. So a lot
Mm,
of the solopreneurs are just saying, "Look, I'm doing my thing, and I'm making my living. I don't need to necessarily grow this thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's part of the plan, that's actually a very good thing. If you are trying to grow it, that, potentially changes things, but the time, we're in a great era where there's so many services that can help companies grow very quickly, right? You can outsource pretty much everything. The one service that exists now that didn't exist when I got started was the employer of records, which was these companies that can hire people full time in different countries. They handle all of the HR paperwork, all of the logistics. It's all on their paper. You pay that as a service, but you don't have to do the guesswork and find that you're getting, in legal jeopardy in another country of laws that you're unfamiliar with, which does tend to happen. So, if you're going down the path where you're actually trying to build a business overseas, my one bit of advice is that do not do it on your own. There's a ton of cool services out there to be able to leverage. It's going to cost money, but that money actually ends up saving a hell of a lot more down the road when things tend to go wrong.
So don't do it on your own. And also going back to what you were saying earlier, don't forget that you have to sell. So
we are all in sales, especially this if you are the digital, going down the nomadic route, because if you're not out of sight, out of mind, right? So it's about establishing, I think, a strong online presence that continues to help people while promoting the value that you're adding. So know your audience and tell them that story, get that out there, because if you're not in, you could be based in Helsinki and networking around Helsinki, and you're the Helsinki guy. That's great, but that doesn't exist digitally. You've got to be the online guy, and you've got to figure out how to get that word out. So I think actually, as part of a sales skill, writing skills are going to be really important for this role as well. I think you've got to be able to tell your story, and you've got to be able to publish that in the relevant places. So I found that to be very effective.
I agree. And ChatGPT AI can be ChatGPT can be very useful.
Yeah, I think it's useful from a structuring standpoint. You got to be very careful, because I was reading an article from a major newspaper, and you could tell it was half GPT written already. It's like, ooh, this is going in a weird direction. So don't get lazy with writing and let ChatGPT do all the heavy lifting. Let it help you with the structuring and with some of the phrasings and ideas, but be careful, because I think we're about to enter an era of we're about to be flooded with AI generated content, and it's going to be eye-wateringly numb until people find their own voice again. So yeah, I guess the long-winded way of saying that is find your voice and have some fun with it.
All right. The marketing guy has talked. Let's talk about your experience traveling with your family and kids. So you got 2 kids, yes?
Yep. 2 kids.
So you guys have been traveling, been on the road since February 2023.
Yep.
Now we are in June, so it's been a little bit less than 6 months.
Yeah, not huge amounts of time, but yep.
How has it been?
Yeah, we pulled the kids out of school, so we are fully trying to educate them, in world schooling approach. It's gone actually very well, but you do have to think about every place you go. It's not about you. It's about the kids, and it's about the family unit. So the question that I always ask is, we have to choose a place that's going to help them to some degree, or there's got to give them something. And it doesn't have to make them excellent at math. I mean, we went to Bali so they could go surfing and learn how to surf. And that's a really cool thing to do. And so as we think about the different countries that we want to spend time in, one of the big questions we ask is, what is it that the kids are going to specifically get out of that experience? And that's not obviously a question that you would ask if you were doing this on your own, or just, couples doing it. The kid component changes the dynamic. But combining that with some online tutoring and just thinking about every minute to make those kind of moments, learning moments. I'll just give you one example. It's like we were in Tasmania, and basically we just said to the kids are at this time 8 and 11, I think 9, 8 and 11. Okay, guys, find a trip for us this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out where we're going to go. Map it out. What's the budget? Where are we going to stay? What's the agenda going to look like? And we just made them try to figure that out. And that was a pretty cool project, I think. Didn't necessarily work that well, but we ended up, but it's not supposed to. If I were to tell you that it worked perfectly, then that's BS. Like that's not how learning works, right? It's but there's a moment where you get to the place that they found, and it's like, hey, you got us here. Congratulations. That's a really cool, empowering moment for kids. So you to me anyway, as a parent, you have to rethink about learning is now much more on our shoulders. So that's changed how I've had to think about our day-to-day interactions and activities.
Have your kids been enjoying it?
They have. They do miss they miss their friends.
Yeah,
which totally makes sense. And we've moved around possibly more than we had planned. So then it becomes harder to even establish short-term friendships when you're hopping around, every few nights.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't do anything differently, but I think about that, and we do have to. I know that other families have had that challenge. That's another part of the decision making is where are we going to land where there is an opportunity for them to get out and start playing football with the local kids or,
Mm-hmm.
do that kind of stuff. So that does change how we think about planning.
Why have you guys decided to go on such a trip?
For us, we've always had that wanderlust sort of mindset anyway. And so that was nothing new. I think for us, the timing was perfect with the kids' age. The kids are right before turning into grumpy teenagers. We are still like parents. They still kind of think we're cool. So this is like the last year we can get away with that before all hell breaks loose. So that for us was the decision point. And then when we do want to eventually settle down somewhere so that they have sort of a teenage years of consistency. So the plan would be to settle for a bit, and then probably put our backpacks back on and head out again.
When do you know when you want to settle?
I don't ever want to really settle. I don't.
I see.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I completely understand.
Conversation, right? I think there's a tribe of us that just have that in our brains. We're wired differently.
Yeah. I don't want to go back to France, but I don't want to be like a digital nomad at the same time. I consider myself as a remote worker.
Yeah. The digital nomads. It's interesting. I think that so we've definitely enjoyed the year. It's not for us. It's not a long-term plan. I don't want to do that. In fact, so maybe I'll take back what I was joking about earlier. I think that we do want to settle somewhere because there is an enjoyment of consistency and routine, right? So to be able to have that and to it's kind of nice waking up knowing where you are. Like if you're traveling all the time, it's that kind of mystery. Like, okay, well now where am I? So I think that we don't have that full-time wandering lust that way.
Right. It's interesting what you're saying because I interviewed a nomad family. They've been riding the planet for 8 or 9 years now.
Yeah, that's hardcore.
And one thing they told me is that they don't know where they're going to sleep every day. And that's okay with them. They love it.
You have to, for most people, and I wonder if they went through this too, you've got to really learn how to live like that. Like that. That's a different mindset, and it's fun when you get to it, but it's not easy to get to that mindset. I have a huge amount of respect for that.
Mm.
But yeah, we've done a couple of those bike trips, and you've got to find your rhythm and your mental agility to be able to just roll with everything as it comes along.
Yeah, yeah. But one thing they did say is, going back to what we were talking about, the home base, they do have a home base. It's in
Yep.
Switzerland, where they're from, and they get back to it on a regular basis,
Okay.
just to recharge.
So I wonder if that's the big takeaway from this digital nomad thing, is that you're
Maybe.
not, most people, even so, we certainly aren't untethered. Like, we're not just out there wandering. And it sounds like even your family that has been doing this for multiple years on
Yeah.
bikes, like even they have kind of their, it's all, call it like a hub and spoke model, where the home base is always there. I think that there's something, especially for kids. I think kids like to know that they've got a home.
Mm-hmm. And also for them, it's also, I think they were talking about the fact that, it's also a way for them to stay in touch with their family, but also to plan for the next part of the trip.
Yeah. There's something about a home. There's something about it. And I think that it's a place that you can kind of let go, and you don't, it's nice because while we're not on the biking, I don't want to compare, that level of adventuring, but yeah, when you don't know where you're going to be living in a day or two, and we're in Airbnb world, so it's not the same level of tenting and things, but that's a strain. That gets nervous, especially if you have kids, because we've got to be responsible. So
all right, well, so before we conclude, any last words for listeners, for future digital nomads?
I think that I think about the world just from working globally. I think that there are more opportunities now than there ever have been, but at the exact same time, there's new levels of pushback, whether that is tax obstacles, companies bringing people back to the office, protectionism, which is big in many countries, which is, my people first. And that's something that in many cases is growing. And so when you are thinking about building a business, you have to know these local markets better than probably ever before. There's a lot of local competition. You might be the best web designer from wherever, and you go into the other side of the world, people could care less about web design in the other part of the world because it's not the same. And there's good talent everywhere now. So I think people need to, that's a reality check, that I think we're now in a more competitive landscape than ever before. So it's just kind of a heads up that, we can't just gallivant around the world and waiting for everybody with open arms to want to embrace us. It's not like that. You've got to carve out your own niche.
Indeed, because like you said several times, nobody cares.
I don't want to end this on a negative note, but you've got to. That's a big reality.
Yeah, no, it's not a negative note. It's a reality check, like you were saying. All right, thank you, Kyle, for your time. Just one more question: how can people contact you if they want, to talk to you about digital nomadism?
Yeah, so my website, leadershipnomad.com. The book information is there as well. That book was really about an entrepreneur's journey, growing a business globally, really from day one, and some of the misadventures that happen along the way of trying to do that. So that's kind of a fun starting point. But yeah, my website has my contact details, my LinkedIn profile as well, just my name, I guess, will get you there. That's really the only place that I publish content regularly.
All right, again, thank you, Kyle.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for listening. We are on a mission to help you optimize your digital nomad life, no matter where you are. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with your friends, family, or anyone interested in digital nomadism, remote work, or expatriation. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.